Well, I think we should go ahead and get started because I would really love to get you guys out of here early tonight, and I think you would probably appreciate getting out of here early tonight. Um, we just have a few things tonight. The main thing is that um, we're just going to do this little sort of presentation thing with your technology integration plans, just to give a chance to kind of share out because that, aside from me, nobody else in the class has really had a good sense of what everybody's been working on there. So I thought it would be good for people to get a chance to hear where everybody ended up with those projects. We have a couple of little wrap up things to do. I do have to apologize, and this was totally my fault. The CCSU course evaluation thing. I had meant to post a link for it, but I said, I'll just, put the link up the night of the last class, and if somebody hasn't done it, they can do it. Well, I didn't look at the email the university had sent me too closely. They closed the surveys on the 8th. So because this is technically finals week, they only accept those online course evaluations through the end of last week. So if you did the course evaluation, then you're great. If you didn't, then that's kind of my fault because I should have looked a little more closely and gotten you that link. I did see that at least a few of you had gotten it done. So I thank you for doing that, but don't worry too much if you didn't because it is what it is and I'm the one that forgot to get that out. So I just have a couple of sort of wrap up things for us to do tonight. In terms of actual work, my grades have to be submitted by a week from tomorrow. So what I will ask is that all work, any work that is left to be submitted or uploaded or whatever, be done by Monday. So you have the weekend if there's still some final things you need to get put up. But unless I've heard from you specifically that, I just need one more day on this thing, I will assume that everything that I'm going to see, I will be able to see starting Monday. And then that gives me the week to get through all the projects and get them graded and so on. What I will do, because I don't see you guys anymore, and I know the grade you get from the university is very non-informative because it's just a single grade, is on your Moodles, I will put in sort of an evaluation thing in that feedback thing to let you know. And the technology integration plans, what I've generally done on those is I take the rubric that's in the course syllabus and I just generate a bunch of copies of that page and mark that rubric up and then either email it to you or submit it back to you through Moodle. But one way or another, you'll get feedback on both of those. And that's really the majority of your grade. The rest of it is all the forum work we did, which I may be able to get a way to get some feedback to you on those, but that's largely about whether you just got the forums completed and participated and so on. So that's all of that sort of stuff. So without further ado, why don't we spend some time talking your technology integration plans. So just to give this a little bit of a format, although like I said before, this is not meant to be a formal presentation that you had to have worked up with, diagrams and handouts and things like that. But just maybe sort of hit the following things and anything else that you think might have been useful or interesting for your project. But what was the topic or the subject of your plan? Who were you targeting? So maybe a little bit of description of, if it was students, what age are the students? What kind of school is it? What kind of program is it? I know a lot of you were dealing with staff, so maybe just give a little bit of an indication of who you were targeting with your plan. What was the problem you were trying to address? That's kind of the key of the whole thing. There should have been some issue that was getting in the way of instruction that you wanted to address with this technology integration plan. A little overview of your needs assessment, the what is versus what should be. So based on your, examination of the problem, where is your population now and where would you like them to be having gone through the technology integration? What technology did you settle on? So just give us a quick overview if it was a piece of software or hardware or a combination of the both. And then just a little reflection on the process itself, the good, the bad, the ugly. What was useful about going through this process? What did you learn from it? What was not so fun going through the process? Those types of things. And then just to make sure that we're all involved, and there's a very small group of us tonight, so this shouldn't take too long. But I just ask that each person have at least one question available or ready to ask the person who's presenting. And it can be about any aspect of it, just more detail, or maybe something that, you had a problem with that you're interested in how they address that particular thing or whatever. So we'll just kind of go around and have each person go through this. So who would like to? I saw this hand first. He just wants to. I just want it to be over. So go ahead, take it away.
Stand or should
You don't need to. I'm going to get a little stage set up. We're going to put on the wireless headset mic. Going to turn this into a real TED Talk moment.
So the topic subject of my plan was basically, and this kind of goes into my problem, was I was trying to find a technology that can help teachers better formatively assess students in the middle of our lessons. So my school district, I'm in Region 10, so Lewis Mills, all of our students are one-to-one in terms of their devices, CLPLDs. So
that's personalized learning device, by the way. It's a little laptop convertible thing.
And they're actually really good computers, so the kids are all synced out with them 24/7. So in terms of like that gives us teachers great opportunities to test out and use different kinds of software in the classroom. So I'm focusing on software, and my target population is my department, so social studies department. There's 7 teachers in our department, including myself and 1 coordinator. I guess the population, if you will, there's 3 of us considered probably newer teachers, while 4 are considered more veteran teachers. And the veteran teachers tend to be, well, depending who, tend to use technology less compared to the more newer teachers.
Don't worry, I'm not going to go back and report to anybody. This is
all
in confidence that you can.
Same building. So needs what is versus what should be. So in general, trying to get the teachers to want to use the technology more and use some sort of software that can help them assess throughout lessons. So what we've noticed is a lot of our teachers do like formal like exit slips or like the old-fashioned show of hands or this and that, which is all great for formal assessments, but you can use technology as well to get a larger kind of pull, more accurate assessment of what all your students are like on the fly. And we are like heavily Microsoft integrated, and a few of us use Microsoft Forms. So like students can answer questions or like polls. But the issue we notice with that is that, let's say if we're on a PowerPoint or a worksheet or whatever, it's like a whole transition from one thing to another just with a form of assessment. And I wanted something that was very quick and just seamless. So the technology I came to is called Nearpod, and I've mentioned that to you guys before. Nearpod basically is this like PowerPoint type interactive. It's hard for me to explain. I mean, actually, I have the full. If I can find what it's exactly called. It's basically a software where it allows you to instruct from it, but students can be engaged. So picture like a PowerPoint, and you can be on your computer with the PowerPoint, like lecturing or doing whatever, explaining something, and the students will have all their PLDs open, and they can watch the PowerPoint, and as you click on your computer, their slides move for them, right? So they'll follow along with you, and when you click, you can put in different sorts of slides, like content slides or video slides, like question slides. And there's different sorts of things you can ask them, like polls or multiple choice questions or draw or like collaborate or matching. So as you're going through a slide of information, you can all of a sudden pop through in a form of assessment. They'll quickly do it within seconds, and then you hit the next slide and it shows the results. And then you as a teacher know immediately, all right, did they understand what I just taught the slide prior? And it kind of allows you to address that a lot quicker. Without having to go back and grade and look at something once the kids leave. It allows you to address it immediately. And that was kind of the key thing that I was focusing on. Am I missing anything? Oh, reflecting the TAB process. So um, obviously, like to find the right technology and go through everything is just kind of tedious. Like the one thing where I felt like once I found Nearpod, I knew this was it. Like I found it and I was like, all right, this is basically kind of had like a criteria in my head of what I was looking for. So something that was engaging, something more or less fun for the kids, something that didn't look, very sad and depressing, like a regular PowerPoint, and something that kind of allowed kids to play games. They could play games on this too. And I found a few apps that were similar to that, but what I didn't like about them was that they were like too gamey, if you will. Like Kahoot was great, for instance, but that was like a transition I was trying to avoid, having to stop and go back, and Nearpod kind of allow that all in one area. Another thing that was pretty cool was that if you have Google Slides, you can like download Google Slides and upload it into there and like reconfigures everything. So let's say if you've already made tons of PowerPoints, you don't have to go from scratch. You can just download it, sync it, and just add whatever you want. So in terms of like time saving, that was huge. Any questions? I'm just kind of just throwing stuff out.
Yeah, no, that's good. Is this, so are you using this? Have you started using this? Or the plan is to look at using this?
So yeah, that's the plan, is to look at starting to use
Okay.
it.
So you haven't gone through, our district has gotten very strict this year about making sure that every piece of software we ask students to use has gone through this process of the COPA compliancy and everything like that.
Mhm.
Like the district has to hold a certificate for any piece of software that we're asking students to use. So all of these interactive things. So I didn't know if you had gone through, if you were that far along with it yet to actually see if you could.
And I've used the software in the past, and that's where it kind of came up again when I was thinking of things to look deeper into. And it's pretty easy to use. The learning curve. If you've used PowerPoint before, you can kind of like
Mhm.
figure it out. Um, so the learning curve is not really too much of a learning curve. And what I really liked about Nearpod is that it's really driven towards teachers. So for instance, like the PowerPoint is great, it's not really like built for teachers, right? And this was built for teachers. So on their website, they have tons of like free professional development, or like they actually have a whole section called formative assessments, and they have examples of like good formative assessments using like certain Nearpod tools. I thought that was pretty cool that they're trying to tailor it for teachers to make it as easy as possible with webinars and all
Cool.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Other questions?
Could I like obviously I wouldn't like trust my first graders to like follow along on a Chromebook for this, but could I make something and then put it on we have like an board and then they could come up and do something that way? Or does it have to be more like
No, you could even do it on there. Just the only part is, let's say if you put like a multiple choice question up, it'd be easy for them to do it on their Chromebook. But you can have it so it's like set on like a smart board like this.
mm-hmm.
Have their Chromebooks out, and whatever's up there will mirror what's over here. So as you're going through, you can just tell them to watch you as you're teaching or whatever. And then when you get to one of those questions,
Mm-hmm.
then you'll tell them to look down and just quickly click whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But what's nice is that like the whole screen turns into Nearpod. So sometimes when I'm teaching and my students are on their PLDs, they'll flip between screens, and I walk up and all of a sudden they're typing. I walk away and they pull up like their hacked IM messaging system, and they're like trying to send friends text messages. So this is nice because it just controls the whole computer, and I don't have to worry about them being distracted because it's all on what I have up there.
Other questions?
Did you say, is it all free?
So like the basic level is free. There's like 4 different subscriptions, and I was going through it, and if I was to do it, I would probably do the gold one. So like session size up to 50, that's 50 people in one given time. So like the reality is I'm not gonna have 50 students on all at the same time. So though like platinum would probably be ideal, or even like the school district one, if you want to save money, I mean, in reality, you kind of work your way down up, right? The storage.
But even the free one gives you up to 40 students.
So that's not even bad at all. I was looking at like storage.
Yeah.
But I was playing around and I made like a hypothetical Nearpod, and I had add slides, images, I embedded some videos to see like how much space it would take up, and you can get in a lot. Like under like just 3 gigs, you can probably save almost 1,000 presentations. So like in terms of how many classes you have, you can get in a fair amount of material.
Huh. Very cool.
So on a department level, obviously it costs a little more, but I mean that's every department has their budgets and they can.
Yeah.
We have software. I know, like I've seen the numbers where we pay like $5,000 for certain things, and I'm like, well, we can pay $5,000 for that, which we use.
No, this sounds very interesting.
The other teachers in the department that are like more inclined to use technology, or you guys talked about this? Or like,
It's interesting because some people who are more not as technology. How should I say it?
We all know.
Or it's a very small group, but they're actually starting to like pick it up. It's ironic because I student taught there, and my student taught last spring. I came in with all this like tech stuff, and it actually inspired a few of them to like switch over, like get rid of like old-fashioned paper packets and start like using more online, platforms. So I feel like that conversation has already started. Seeing other people do it. So I'm not too worried about the convincing part. It's just like just to learn it and get used to using it and then implementing it. Taking the time to make, once you have stuff, you're comfortable. Your PowerPoints you already have or all that stuff. So just take the next step and convert things over and find the time to do that. But I like in my plan, I like allow PLC time so that we have a lot of shared collaboration time. And our coordinator, he's pretty good about giving us the time we need. So that would be a good time to do this.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. Anything else? You're just.
Thought you were gonna.
You really want to. All right.
you should make her go laugh.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the kid who always has their hand up, and the teacher's purposefully like not calling on them. So, yes, you may
Okay.
absolutely go next.
Thank you. Okay, so the topic subject of my plan, last year in our school district, or mainly in our school, we were a pilot school for the computer phonics program called Lexia, and it was not implemented very well at all for us and for our students. We were supposed to be using it all year, and I barely touched it at all because it was really difficult to use and figure out. So I wanted to look at this project as more of like if I was going to implement this as an administrator, like what would I do, and kind of change what was done for us. So that's kind of the topic and subject of it. The plan was targeting my whole K-5 school, but last year our kindergarten was at a different school, so I just said 1 through 5. But specifically, I was looking at our 5 first grade classes who are made up of about 20 to 22 kids in each room. I wanted to address the problem that they were having an extremely hard time getting onto, number 1, the Chromebooks, and number 2, getting onto Lexia. And I eventually, so this kind of goes into the needs assessment. So the whole thing is that they wanted Lexia to be done during center time. And I found last year that we could never fit in guided reading groups because the teachers were constantly trying to help them get on Lexia, trying to help them get on the computers. So what was that they were not independent being able to get on the computers. And what should be is that they should be able to successfully get on computers and Lexia by themselves. And if they needed help, the teachers should assign what I called and what we do technology helpers to help out. At our school, we have a 2-to-1 student to technology ratio. So it was a matter of figuring out rotation so that everyone would be able to get on at the same time. So obviously we settled on Lexia, and they were looking at different types of technology. So if we were to use like iPads, would it help at all? If we were to use Chromebooks, desktops, some teachers this year used desktops, and they said that they hated it because the kids were so used to just like touching the screen because of the Chromebook, so they'd be sitting there like, why isn't it doing anything?
I do that a lot now
Yeah.
too. Like so
Yeah.
many of my devices are touchscreen that I'll find myself, how come it's not? Oh,
Yeah.
right.
And they'd get so frustrated. So we settled on the touchscreen Chromebooks for grades 1 and 2, and then the older students got Chromebooks, but they weren't necessarily touchscreen; they were just there. And then let's see, that was pretty much the gist of it right there. And then just for the timeline, because I tried to do like staff implementation and then student implementation. So I had an 11-week timeline from, because we did have PD from the Lexia company. So I had a couple of weeks of them coming in and helping, and then staff introducing Lexia to the students, first by doing the Chromebooks, and then introducing the actual Lexia program. And staff is actually able to go into the program and kind of change around usernames and passwords to make it easier for them. And I recommended that in the plan to use that. And I thought that doing the actual plan was really interesting to see like how it was implemented for us versus a better, more effective way that it could have been implemented. Because I mean, I think like the last year that we did it was totally wasted, and I feel like they wasted a lot of money. This year it's a little bit better, but because of the things that I found out by doing this, I kind of implemented that in my own room. So.
I mean, what I found fascinating about your whole thing was this is a perfect example of here's some technology. We put it in the classrooms, things are going to get better.
Right.
And the software could be great and could do phenomenal things for the kids. But what you discovered is that it's not the software that was the issue. You had the kids couldn't even get to the software, and teachers were spending so much time helping the kids get to the software.
Right. And
so it wasn't even the software or the hardware that was the issue. It was a management side of things.
yeah.
And being able to discover something like that, and that could be an easy fix. That's maybe not an expensive fix. So like you said, if it's just coming up with a unified way for usernames and passwords to be set or things like that.
And they, like last year and this year too, they made it part of our SLOs. So last year we were scrambling, trying to we took away instruction to get them onto Lexia, and it takes an hour for them to even find the letters to be able to log in. So it's a lot of troubleshooting that way. So, I mean, I even have kids now who still can't figure out how to log in and probably never will.
Yeah.
First grade, but.
All right. Questions?
So about the program, so I may have missed the first time you were saying the early introduction. What is this program exactly?
So
for
it's-
vowels or?
So it's called Lexia, and they have to, when they go in, they take an initial pre-test, and that determines. So it ranges from pre-K to I think second or third grade, and then there's a different software that they go to once they pass all those levels, and it's specific to either it goes anywhere from letter recognition. So if they're in pre, which a lot of my students started the year at pre-K still, so basic letter and sound recognition, and it goes all the way up to first grade, second grade skills, and they have to pass a certain number of levels. And it's differentiated to them, which is nice. It's specifically what they need. But again, it talks to them, so they need headphones, and we have headphones that break, or students who don't bring in headphones. So last year, no one brought in headphones, so it was loud during the whole time. So it defeats the purpose of the whole program.
Right, you're trying to do phonics, and
Right.
you can't hear
Right.
the phonics.
So, but yeah, it's mostly phonics, but it goes from basic phonemic awareness skills all the way to more advanced stuff.
So they, as right now, they expect kids that don't have letter recognition to know how to log in on a computer. Do they log in
Do you
by
see my
clicking the pretty shapes or something?
No, they literally, so their usernames are all these complicated letters and numbers, but I made every one of their usernames Rachel, and then our classroom number's 30. So Rachel 30. And then everyone's password is read. So if I need to log them in quickly, I can just type it in. But I mean, I have 25-minute center rotations, and they will sit there the entire time looking for, and I'm pulling groups, so I can't. It is what it is. So, but yeah.
The reason I ask is because there's a program that I bought for my daughter because I'm a teacher and I want her to know how to read. And when she logs in, I can't remember what it's called, but when she logs in, she hers was purple rocket ship was her login, and they would have like a series of pictures, and she would know like I have to click this color and then I click this shape,
Mm-hmm.
and then for the password it was like this shape, and this shape, and you click those in that order. And
That would make more
that's like an
sense.
alternate.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. That how
Yeah.
circular that is. Of you have to be able to read to log into the program that's going to teach you how to
And
read.
it's like
Yeah.
for first grade, like developmentally, reversals are very common.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I'll be typing in reeb, and I'm like, no, it's read, and they're like, I'm hitting the D, and I'm like, no,
Right,
you're
but they're hitting the
and
B.
they don't. So
That's a place where and like what do they call it? Like the
Fingerprint?
Touch ID.
metric, something metric. What am I looking? Biometrics.
yeah,
Like something would actually be more useful because
Yeah.
it could recognize a student by something other than them having to like type in a.
and they have to type in their Chromebook username and password, which we can't change because the district sets it, and then they have to go to the Lexia website. Then they have to type in my teacher email, so Cunningham@csdnd.org, which getting that app for them is like
Yeah.
mind blowing.
It's the A in a circle.
Yeah, they're like, and then they have to do their username and password. So
Wow. All right. Perfect example of real world. What's going on?
fun stuff.
All right. Great. Thank you. All right. We're down to 3. Go for it.
I'll jump on it. All right. So my project was on using technology that we already own, and part of the what is situation that I was presenting is that I have in our building we have somewhere around 1,000 electronic devices, and the vast majority of the time, and I wasn't able to ever nail down a number. Our IT department didn't really want to tell me how much they don't get used. And it's staggering. And so my team, I was focusing on, we have 24 students currently. Actually, I think we're down to 22 right now, but as of when I wrote this presentation, we had 24. We have a peak capacity of 50 students, and we have one laptop cart of 40 laptops for our team. And the laptop cart has a charger built in, it locks, et cetera, which is a big requirement for us. My team is mostly special education identified. We had 21 males and 3 females at the time. I think we are getting another female on Monday and losing a male student tomorrow, which is wonderful because he's transitioning out of our team, which is the behavior intervention team. And that's why it was such a huge focus for me, because these students last year were suspended for an aggregate of 500 days. And so these are kids who spent most of last year at home on the couch playing video games, and they're not super into listening to you talk all day. So using technology is a great way to get these students interested in what's going on, get them engaged in the class, present learning in a different way, and yet these computers spend most of their time locked up in someone's classroom. And so what I wanted to try to get to is at least 2 times daily, the students would be accessing learning through technology, whereas right now we're at somewhere around 2 times per week. And one of those being at least one academic class, and the other one being a daily social emotional class, which our team is, I'll talk a little bit more about later, but we have access to a really interesting and really cool social emotional education program. So I wanted to try to like boost that. And so one of the ways that I want to do that is first, I want to purchase 4 charging stations. I got super specific because I asked our IT department what we could use. We have a relationship with Dell because all of our computers are purchased through Dell. So we narrowed it down to this thing called the Dell Lock and Charge, which is about the size of one of those air conditioning units and bolts to the wall. And it meets all of our requirements, and it holds 10 laptops. So that means we could break that laptop cart into 4 separate stations, meaning that ELA, math, social studies, and science would each have 10 laptops in their rooms at all times for us to use whenever we wanted. Totally breaking down that one barrier, which it seems when you talk about it to be like not a big deal, to just walk down the hallway and be like, hey, Mr. So-and-so, I'm gonna take 10 laptops off the cart today, except that when you get down there and he's using them for something in his class, and oh, by the way, math has a few in her class, and we have a few that are broken and the parts are in order, et cetera, and you end up with, you're like, well, I can have 3, I have 10 kids, it's not gonna work. But that was literally the only thing that we need to buy because everything else we already own. We already have access to the programs. We already have access to um, the math supervisor and English supervisor agreed to do a half day PD with us, which is awesome. And then this Rethink Social Emotional Training program has a bunch of online interactive training that is available for free to people like us who have grant access because somebody was kind enough to write a check for us to get access to this thing. Additionally, I want a day, at least a full day, or it could be 2 half-day PDs. We have several Google Level 2 certified people, which I wasn't really sure what that was at the beginning of this. I was like, yeah, whatever, it's Google, it's fine, everybody can figure it out. Really crazy levels of understanding when you get to that point, apparently. Because I was talking to one of them who, again, I went like full on this thing. I wanted to get like commitments out of people because this is going to happen, perhaps. But I really wanted this to happen. So this Google Level 2 certified teacher is in our tech department, not tech ed. And when I talked to her, she was like, "Oh yeah, I'll show you guys how to do blah 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 blah." And I was like, "I don't know what that is, so cool. Like if you can teach us how to do that, that'd be great." So it comes out to being somewhere between 6 half-day PDs, or I'm sorry, between 4 half-day and 6 half-day PDs, and just under $3,000 for us to get this thing rolling. And what it really boils down to is teaching teachers how to use the tech in classrooms and removing the barriers to entry for daily use. So having access to walk into the classroom and here's your laptops. You don't have to go and fight with the dude down the hallway. You don't have to wonder how to use the program. We have the math department. It's going to teach you how to use the math program. The ELA department or the ELA coach is going to teach us how to use the ELA program. So like even in science class, I'll know how to use these programs. I can support my kids if we have a random time and they're like, "Hey, mister, can I use a computer?" I'll be like, "Yeah, sure," but you're going to do something of value on it. Whereas right now what happens a lot of times is when kids have downtime and they are in a room where there's computers, they're like, "Oh, I'm going to go to Cool Math." And that's that, right? So we can use, because Cool Math, by the way, if you're not familiar with it, those of you who are elementary, Cool Math is how all the cool kids get to all the games that are still available. Our district is smart enough to block addictinggames.com, but not smart enough to block coolmathgames.com because they think math games is learning. So anyway, we started talking about timeline with my group at school, and there's no reason we can't start with our first half-day PE in January and get this thing done by the end of the year. If our IT department plays nice and gets our units installed, which they likely won't the first year. The money part of it is going to be an argument, even though it's only a few grand. I'm going to have to ask beg, borrow, and steal to get money to get this thing done. But we could get the PD part of this done by the end of this current school year, which means that day one of school year 2020-2021, we can have our kids interacting with these programs every day. So it won't be that, I'm not expecting every teacher to teach every class online. I'm not expecting that every teacher teach even one class a day online. But we will have the social emotional class, which is a daily activity. And if even one teacher chooses to teach one lesson online each day, right? Or each week rather, that'll average out to 2 times a day, right? And that doesn't include any of our specials classes, which many of those are being done online now because we have kids that are doing music programs online and they're learning how to write music, and then we have kids in a tech program where they're learning how to do design and 3D printing and stuff like that. So it'll be that the kids are actually using the technology. And this is super focused, super small. We're talking about a maximum impact of 50 kids a year. But I feel like this is something that, being that we're in such an interesting and different situation on my team this year, and I don't see our team going anywhere over the next couple of years, I feel like this is something that would be super valuable for us because we really are working, we're working with kids who are behind the 8 ball who need one of the programs is Lexia. We need to have our kids being brought up to speed, and that's a program that a student doesn't have to show the whole class that he doesn't know how to read what everyone else is reading because it's helping him at where he is. Mm-hmm. Or in math, one of the math programs that we use, I can't remember what it's called, but the students, much like with Lexia, they test into and test out of, and it's individualized. So, I have a student in one of my classes that she doesn't know how to do whatever in math. Okay, whatever, no problem, because it's working with you individually. It's not sharing that with everyone. which is a huge frustration for my kids. My kids really don't like. I had one of my kids. He tells me all the time, Mister, why do you walk out of class? I won't go to class because I'd rather be bad than dumb. I'm like, well, you're both. But this is a way for you to, be neither bad. No, I mess with my kids because we have a really different relationship. But it's one of the ways that we can help the kids get through this hard part and get back into liking school again.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's something in there the process. The process for this thing was wild because I really took it to heart and I really did have those conversations with other people in my building and we're talking to the ID department and then hearing like, well, we'll get back to you as soon as we, and then like 3 weeks later, you're like, hey dude, all you had to do was tell me which of these things would work. Well, we did an A and B and actually we like this other thing over here. Why? And then, talking to them about, oh, well, you have a relationship with Dell. Like, I would have never known that. Yeah, sure, all of our laptops say Dell on them, but it doesn't mean anything to me. I'm not the person who orders them. So that part of it was really cool. That also is kind of the bad part, though, because when you're hung up waiting for other people, like, I have no problem if I'm not doing a good job. I have no problem when someone tells me you're not doing a good job. I have a problem when I'm not doing a good job because someone else has let me down. And I felt like talking to other people in other departments, that's something that I'm going to have to come to grips with if I really want to be a teacher leader at some point. Because not everybody has their wits about them and not everybody is focused on things the way that I need them to be at the time that I need them to be. And my background being that I came out of the military, like I am used to like, hey, I need this done, and then being like, okay, cool, and then whatever the thing was is done. And now it's like, hey, I need you to do the thing. All right, cool, we'll do the thing. And then a little while later, you're like, hey, where's the thing? And they're like, oh yeah, we'll do that later. But no, that's not like. So that was kind of a weird thing that I'm going to have to learn how to deal with as we move further into teacher leadership.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, it's interesting. So far, all three have a little bit of a common thread in that for the most part, it's all been, we have the technology already. We've got the PLDs. We've got the Lexia. We've got the machines. We've got all this stuff. But there's been some barrier that's sitting in the way that a lot of times it's not about a lot of money or anything like that, but just figuring out that that's the barrier that's standing in the way. So thoughts, comments, questions?
I'm more of a bunch of comments, but I'll reserve some. One observation is it went from like 1 to 1 to 2 to 1 to what's your ratio if you guys are at capacity?
If we're at capacity, it's not even close.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what our total capacity is, but we're way under 1 to 1 or 2 to 1.
So I don't know if people know, like we work in the same school districts. And one of the things that I do for our district is I do like mini grant opportunities. So small pools of money that people can apply for, and every year we get some technology driven things. In the beginning of the process, I didn't really understand. Like I was like, I don't know, it sounds cool. You should get some iPads or something. And then further in the process, I started to learn about like what makes something good, what makes something bad. I think it's very frustrating to hear that like people have applied, bought technology, and then just sit somewhere. And I think the difference is like the plan. And is there going to be professional development? Are people going to like, learn how to use it? Are there barriers? So like to see a plan that's really thought out and considers all of those is really what makes a difference. Like we've given out tons and tons of money for technology that's sitting somewhere, and that's what really makes a difference. So
yeah.
I was just gonna say too, we were told, because our district is like, use technology, and we were told at our school specifically that there's like over 600 Chromebooks in the building, and we're like, all right, that should be a 1-to-1 ratio then. But it's us sharing between like 2 or 3 classrooms at a time, so it's like the same thing. We have to go walk to get the Chromebooks, carry all these Chromebooks to our. So it's the same. What is it called that you want to get?
It's a lock-in charge. I can send you the link. It's
Yeah.
I found it on Amazon, and they're not very expensive. They're like $600 a piece.
Mm-hmm.
And and then they're in your room.
Yeah.
And you don't have to screw with dealing with other people saying no or whatever.
It's the same thing, like they'll go over and it's like, oh, these guys are using these. She's using all these. It's like,
I think that's it right there.
Unicorns do exist.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that, like, when I was doing this, oh, it's the one that was on the left, the smart locker. That was the one that I was going for. Yeah, they're like super cheap. So you can get, there's the one that I was looking at is the 10 slot. It's $600. But so like you go down, you know, like you're talking about, you go next door to take the Chromebooks. You got to walk them back to your room. You get there, turn them on. Half of them are dead because nobody plugged them in last night, or you know something's broken and you haven't gotten the key for because one of them is missing the escape key. So now you can't log in. And you're like, you know, this is useless. Like, why not, have it right there, and then I could just walk over. And at the end of the day, I plug them all in. If my kids, for some reason, didn't remember to, or seventh period was a mess, then I can go. It's only 10. I'm not sitting there taking my whole card apart, and
Nice. Cool. All right. Anything else? All right. Down to the final two. You guys gonna rock paper scissors it, or?
I'll do it.
You always get down to the people who are like, I don't care. What are you? Well, I don't care.
It's just too agreeable.
All right, I'll try to cover everything. Don't know if I'll go in order. So
That's all right.
again, my perspective is a little different because I'm coming in not as a teacher, but I do family and community engagement. But really, we use that, like our office, the ideal behind it is that we use family engagement as a tool for student achievement, right? So I was looking at literacy rates, students not being at reading level by third grade. Many of you know, huge indicator for further outcomes. So looking at an approach through technology that we can help engage parents to be partners in building those skills in our students. At the same time, I'm also really involved in a lot of our work to get students into pre-K programs. There's a bunch of structural issues with like how pre-K is set up, but we know that when students aren't enrolled in any form of formalized like preschool, they come in kindergarten further behind, and like third grade gap wise. So really looking at ways that we can help give parents the information and resources to help support their students, particularly in reading, which is a change from what my initial plan was going to be. It was all going to be about community partners and how we outreach to them, but I didn't really like what I found. What I ended up finding was a program called Ready Rosie. There are a few applications that exist out there for parents to use when it comes to engagement and building literacy skills, some of which I have now downloaded as a new parent, Room. There's a few other things that exist, many of them free. Ready Rosie ended up being something that they offer a free version, but what I really appreciated on their paid version is that it really focuses on a partnership. So teachers have a role in it. So you're not just getting content from a third-party vendor. Teachers actually select content that connects to what they're doing in the classroom. So whatever their particular lesson plan may be at the time, what they can do is select short videos, they're 2-minute videos, and have them uploaded to like their classroom. So a parent can go in, watch a 2-minute video, and it will focus on a specific skill. They have somewhere on their website like sample videos, but it's everyday things. What I really appreciate is that in one example, a parent is unloading groceries, and they talk to you about things that you should be saying that builds their vocabulary, talking about textures of things, talking about colors of things. So a majority of the focus is on literacy, but it also goes into social emotional learning. Yeah. So on those videos, and you don't have to watch them, but it starts off from baby, pre-K to elementary, which I also appreciated about this versus some of the other programs that are out there. A lot of them kind of age out by the time a kid gets into kindergarten. And really what I was looking at was really that third grade threshold. So again, they're 2-minute short videos. What's really nice about it, again, is that you don't have to, from there, purchase any other materials, or parents don't have to like purchase books or do anything. It's all about having conversations that are going to build these skills in students. The cost per district, so I kind of laid out a plan that I actually I know is not going to work because funding's not there, and the personnel is going to use, their positions are being cut. Sorry. So yeah.
Yeah.
At one point though, it made a ton of sense. What I'm proposing in my plan is a 1-year pilot, looking at about a $6,000 commitment to do it at one elementary school, and that would allow access kindergarten through 5th grade, every classroom, every family to have access to Ready Rosie. Within there, we would do a number of trainings for staff, and that would be done by the Ready Rosie staff, so that's part of the cost that they include. And then the office that I work for, the plan would be to have them do kind of an outreaching to families at multiple points throughout the school year. So starting with open house in the beginning of the school year, going through conferences, walking them through initial setup, and then using it. What's also fantastic about the program is that it's available in English and Spanish and a few other languages, which is very useful in our district. The plan from there is for year 2 to kind of launch district-wide. The cost there would be a lot larger. I think we're looking at about 18 grand for the district. So that's 8 elementary schools and 1 pre-K. But what's also nice about that is in my conversations with some of the reps, as long as you live in the area code, you can kind of, or the zip code, you can still have access to it. So we have families that may not have all of their kids enrolled in one of our schools, they can still use the software, which I think is a nice thing when we're talking about building the community. What's also nice is that they actually offer, I brought printouts, you don't have to look at it.
Yeah.
But they offer a number of workshops specifically for families. So one of the things that I'm really big on is, I know for educators, it's great that we have opportunities to have like professional development. I think it's really important to offer that for families in a way that's like meaningful, not just a small one-time event. It's a series of workshops that they offer, everything from relationships mattering to families as leaders, parents as partners. All of these kind of do 2 things. One, it's building that literacy skills, but it's really building the capacity of parents to be like equal partners in their education. Right? So all the research says that the more involved parents are, the better student outcomes are, and really giving them the tools to feel confident as a partner. So to have a conversation with a teacher, like, listen, you're saying you're seeing this in the classroom. Here's what I'm seeing. I'm doing some of these activities, and it allows a space for conversation. So maybe there's something that they should be doing, and we can kind of go through the videos together, kind of identify areas, barriers, and new approaches. I don't know what else I was supposed to talk about.
No, that's good. What you just said there of like professional development for the parents, like that's a really interesting idea that I would have never thought of. But it makes that. I mean, obviously, it's not professional development, but that idea of having training, just like we do for the students and just like we do for the faculty and everyone else, like.
Yeah, and I think that part of my perspective on it is as a new parent. Before I was a parent, I was like, listen, parents must know everything that's going on with their kid. There's a lot of things that I don't know anything about a baby, and I'm very responsible for her.
I have a student in my own district. She'll be in my school next year, and there's a lot of what goes on in her daily school life that I have no idea what it is, and I'm right there, and I'm even in this school already. So
yeah, so it's providing them like high quality content and doing it in a professional way that you would expect that you were receiving content. So it's needed, and I think the approach is important. And what I really enjoyed about this is that it feels very approachable, but if parents want to go deeper, so it breaks down the science behind like what you're doing, the skills that they're building, and there's social emotional aspects to it. They're building out capacity for more STEM related stuff. So parents can go a lot deeper if they choose, but on the surface level, they're getting like, here's a small activity that you can do in 2 minutes with your kid, and you can have a conversation with the teacher later, or the teacher can provide feedback.
Nice. Questions? Comments?
You looked into using it for
So I'll use it like personally,
Yeah.
because there is a free version that you can do, which is kind of cool. So yeah, the office that I work for, our funding got cut. I get really weird every time I talk about it. So there was substantial cuts to that. So before this had started, I actually talked to my boss about it. She was pretty into the idea, so we got some quotes. And overall, the cost to have it for a district isn't that big. I think what's important is having the support. So to really have that family engagement, when we do family engagement events, like part of it is if I'm having an event, I feed you. We like to do raffles at them, and I thought that was a great opportunity. Like we raffle off an iPad Mini that's in my budget. We, like really make this something that's important to families. I don't think we'd be able to do that full capacity. May be able to pilot it at one school, but then you have to identify staff that can really be there to support families as they're onboarding and learning the process. So I don't know. So,
All right. Number 5.
Okay. So the topic or subject of my plan essentially is what I looked at was kind of the disparity, I guess, or at least within within both the districts in which I work. I feel like the majority of kids are going home to homes where English is the primary language that's spoken, and so as a Spanish teacher, I'm thinking of just access to content, but also access to opportunities to practice in the target language outside of the classroom. Just thinking about retention. So the middle school that I'm at in Region 10, there, the kids that I see them every other day. So it's 40 minutes, 2 to 3 times a week, depending on the week. And then at the high school I'm at Farmington High, that's every day, but still just about 40 minutes. So I wanted to look at basically the need, I guess, was that, or the issue that I saw was that where students aren't having enough opportunity to practice and have authentic opportunities to practice speaking in the target language outside of the classroom. So I wanted to look into software, web-based apps that could provide them with opportunities to not just to have opportunities to speak in the target language, but then to hopefully have opportunities for more spontaneous interaction and conversation. Yeah, the plan is more targeting. I mean, it could be definitely used at the middle school level, but I was looking more, I guess, at the high school level. So in Farmington High, again, where most kids are going home, and English is the primary language spoken at home. And so yeah, it was more focused on the students as opposed to the staff and implementing it with the students. The problem I think I mentioned. And yeah, so essentially the needs assessment, looking at basically where students are now. There's so a lot. What we use at Farmington High is for our standards. We use ACTFL, the American Council of Teachers of Foreign Language, and a lot of their ratings. And so they go from like advanced or novice low, novice mid, novice high, intermediate, low, mid, high, and then advanced, low, mid, high, and there are different ratings for each of the methods of output of speaking and then of writing. And so yeah, and at Farmington High we do this modified OPI, this oral proficiency exam that ACTFL does. So essentially that it's like one of those exams where we assess their oral proficiency and whether like how much they're able to produce in the target language. And so right now we've realized that we want them to be at a higher level, hopefully by the time that they're graduating, or by the time that they meet their graduation requirements. So ultimately, I ended up looking at more at Flipgrid, and I talked about it also a little bit more when we were looking at those web-based apps, I think. And so Flipgrid is a device or is an app that allows for you to you can post a prompt. So as the teacher, you can go and you can post a prompt, and it can be either a video or a written prompt, and then the students see the prompt and then respond to it. You can set the video length as far as how long they record for or how long they have to record. And yeah, they're responding. Hopefully, all the prompt can be in the target language, and then they're responding in the target language. So the nice thing about that is obviously assigning it as homework or doing maybe even implementing some sort of flipped classroom. Um, they have an opportunity to be speaking Spanish or whatever language outside of the classroom. Um, and so that was nice. One of the other things that I really liked about Flipgrid is that it has the opportunity for interaction. Like, so you can respond, you respond to the prompt, but then beyond that, you can go into classmates' responses and you can respond to their responses. So kind of like the forum idea, forum setup, in that you can go in and comment on others. So I appreciated that. And just recently I found out, I don't know the ins and outs of it as well as I'd like to, but I found out that I think if you, so basically as the teacher, you go and you set up, you create this grid, which is your classroom essentially, and that's where you post the prompts and kids can go in and they upload their videos in that grid. And if you're able to connect with the teacher either in another country or another state or wherever, you can essentially kind of have like coordinate these grid pals is what they call them on Flipgrid, which is the idea of a pen pal, but through Flipgrid, so that they could have these conversations, these interactions, not written but speaking. So yeah, the hope would be that they're to implement that to the point where they're doing something like that on Flipgrid, responding to these prompts, like at a minimum of 3 nights a week, to have that additional practice of speaking in the target language outside of the classroom. It was free, so I settled on that as well, which is nice.
That's always nice.
Yeah, looking at kind of just the setup, it's yeah, as a web-based app, it's a little bit more user-friendly for students. Typically, it's pretty simple and straightforward, but I thought it could be useful to set up a PD, like a couple of PDs, or have it be at least a PD session for on a professional development day, to where for part of it, like Flipgrid is introduced within our department, for department wide. It's introduced, and we're looking at the ins and outs, and we're kind of giving some guidance through it, how to set up our own Flipgrid, our own grid, whatever I just call it. Yeah, grid, for our own classroom. And then by the end of it, the hope was that would be at that PE session that we're able to upload, like there's a prompt, it's just kind of a rehearsal, like make sure you're able to use the software. So you upload your own video, and then the homework between that and the next PD session where we get to like kind of follow up with it is to respond to somebody else, so you get that opportunity to interact with it and you get a little bit more experience with the app, so that you can hopefully, like by using it and by experiencing it, figure out the ins and outs and maybe the kinks or the common questions or concerns. And in that PD, hopefully the teachers would be able to implement it in their classrooms to the point where they become the experts and would be able to address questions or common concerns that students might have. So I figured, yeah, it'd be easy enough to do and implement within a couple of months, to the point where teachers felt comfortable and familiar with it, and students felt comfortable and familiar with it as well. Yeah, and I think that just given the minimal amount of time that kids are in the target language, either hearing it or speaking it and producing it, that time outside of the classroom can be huge for retention. So, and then the process, gosh, it's just like, so this ended up being my, like that 4th forum question.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of related to the TIP in general. It's just like, but just made all of this made me think, which was obviously on a very small scale in terms of like, if you were to take something like this to a district or even a school, like just kind of made me question or wonder about the process in general, like how much approval does it need? Whose approval does a TIP need in order to get implemented or started to to be initially integrated? And just like what kind of like red tape or what kind of barriers are there, and what's the process of actually getting something not just proposed but then assessed, analyzed, and then eventually implemented. So it's all really interesting and things that I've never given thought to.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, it's we've technology, I think, overtook schools before schools were ready to really know what to do with it. So you typically had, your AV person who was somebody that was probably tucked away in a little room off of the library that had control over the DVD players and the film projectors and the overhead projectors and all that. And I think finally districts are starting to staff realizing that they need people who actually can spearhead and can organize all of this. But I think that's happening after a lot of schools sort of were forced to put technology into the schools. So that I guess the cart before the horse kind of a thing of I feel like, a lot of districts are now playing catch up of, oh yeah, now we have all this stuff, but nobody really ever was in a position to look at the big picture and figure out like, how should this come into the district or how should this come into our schools? It's a big process, and it gets shortchanged a lot, which is kind of part of the point of this whole thing. I mean, you guys are all in teacher leadership, and it's not that you're going to be the ones out there as the IT specialists, but even if you're just being a teacher leader within your school, anywhere up to becoming a principal, this is going to be a piece of your awareness of because technology is not going away of, okay, well, just in my department, we want to do this. So let's make sure we've got a well thought out plan in place and all the things you need to think about, all the way up to now you're the principal of a school and you're deciding to go one-to-one. So what does that mean? What do we need to have in place? Who do I need to hire to make sure that this is going to all work out in the end? So it's in the background. It's not in the foreground of a lot of schools, but it's a key to any sort of technology integration is to have that plan. So yeah, these all sound great, and I love that it was a wide range of things. It was software, it was hardware, it was stuff you already had that you needed to use, it was stuff that you didn't have that you needed to get. Everything from pre-K all the way up through high school. So what I'll be doing, is basically just going over your final plan documents sometime over the course of the next week and taking a look at them. But it looks like a lot of really good things have happened and things have been learned, which is key. So, all right, well, let's wrap this thing up here. So, a couple of things. I wanted to take a moment just, by way of a sort of putting a button on things, just to go back to, this comes straight out of the syllabus from the beginning of the course, all the way back in September. And there were these 5 learning outcomes, or these 5 outcomes for this course. The first one was developing and applying effective instructional design plans related to various educational technologies. And that was sort of our main focus of that was that ADDIE design plan, which is not, as we learned, a perfect design method, but is a design method and is a good way to approach anything that's related towards instruction, but instructional technology as well fits into that. So we did ADDIE plans for our Moodles. We did ADDIE plans for the technology integration plans and took a look at that. Creating instructional materials that can be delivered using e-learning technologies. And this was spread out over about 10 weeks of the course. We spent a couple weeks on graphics and the Gestalt principles, video, audio, Web 2.0, online assessment, and kind of in each of those areas learned some tools. Certainly not expecting that any of you at this point is an expert on any of these. It's not like you're going to go out now and be a professional graphic designer, but at least to have that awareness of when instructional materials are being created, especially through technology means, sort of some key strategies or some key things to keep in mind that can maybe help make those things more effective and more useful for your students. Number 3 was creating or adapting an instructional unit to incorporate instructional technology. That was primarily the Moodle projects. So getting a chance to then take that content and actually deliver it through a structured online means. Again, not that maybe your school uses Moodle or that you may ever use Moodle again outside of Central, but whatever your learning management system is, whether it's Google Classroom, whether it's Microsoft Teams, whether it's, whatever else is out there, having gone through that process of having to think through, how do I take something that normally I'm standing in front of a class and just teaching them, how can I convert that into a technology that can be presented to students sort of at their own pace and at their own time. And as we've seen, more and more schools starting to go towards this. Here's a snow day, but it's not a snow day. We're expecting you to still teach your students through whatever technology you're using. So having gone through that process of how to segment and how to put all that together, evaluating the challenges of implementing technology in a school setting, sort of the initial stages of our technology integration plans, where you were looking at other schools' integration plans and then examining your own issues, and then develop a written technology implementation plan for a school. That obviously was the projects which you just all talked about. So, hopefully we hit all of the things along the way. I know and I removed that one piece out of what we were doing because I recognize that this is a lot to go through, even in a one semester class. When we get started, 15 weeks seems like an awfully long time, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, it's week 13 and we still have it. But knowing that none of you is in the educational technology program, the point of this elective, the point of this class was to hopefully give you an overview and sort of a window into a number of different facets of the world of educational technology that then you can apply through wherever you end up in terms of a leadership role. So whether that's personal things or just being able to create your own materials or come up with a plan, or helping students out by being able to deliver materials through technology, or to be able to help your department or to help your school through helping to develop technology integration plans. Hopefully, some piece of this or more than one piece of this will be things that you will be able to find useful and integrate down the road as you continue to grow as educational leaders. That's what we all want to be, leaders of education. So, any comments or questions, anything like that? Yeah.
The ADDIE that was mentioned for the Moodle, that would have been done through our Moodle ID plans, right?
That was what that was. Yes, that was part one and part two. We never, because of the scope of this class and what we're doing, the I and the E of the ADDIE, we never really complete because that's the implementation and then the evaluation. But it sounds like a couple of you, like with your TIP plans, these may actually be things that you may actually be doing. So that would give you a chance to actually implement something, go through that, and then to see whether the implementation worked, and that's sort of completing that. But we covered at least the ADD part of the ADDIE part of it. So yeah, that was the phase one and phase two, that series of questions where you were doing the needs assessment, you were evaluating your audience, you were stating the problem, and all of that was all directly out of the ADDIE model. So, all right, so just sort of two things to finish up. I have one final activity, and hopefully this will just take a few minutes. The one sentence takeaway. I set this up as a Moodle glossary, which is a little unusual, I guess, but just to go in, and this is kind of just partly for feedback for me, but just to think about what's a one sentence takeaway summary from your experience in this class. It could be something specific related to one of the projects. It could be an overall thing. It can be positive. It can be negative. It can be somewhere in between. So just to kind of throw that in there. And then the other thing, and I'm not going to require anybody to do this, but I always like to do this because the CCSU feedback forms and all of that, we get a look at some of it. If you have feedback for me, I've left not a forum, a feedback activity here. And if you have comments for me, I would appreciate you taking a moment sometime, and this isn't part of your grade or anything, so you don't even have to do it before Monday. But if you have feedback for me, I would appreciate getting that, particularly if it's something you feel needs to be improved. I mean, these courses from year to year are constantly evolving. The technology is evolving, the needs of the students are evolving, the size of the classes evolve, and the students in them. So I'm always open to hearing your thoughts and to hear if there's things that you think might have been useful that we didn't get a chance to cover, or if there's things you think we spent too much time on that you think we could have spent less. I would appreciate hearing about that because I like to get that feedback directly rather than waiting for a department chair to come to me and say, hey, I looked at these things and what's going on here. So that's just, I'm just letting you know that's there. You don't have to post anything to that, but I would ask you to give me at least your 1-sentence takeaway of the course. And then honestly, that is basically it for us, believe it or not. So like I said, just any remaining work that needs to be done or uploaded or adjusted or added to, try to have that done by Monday. If you need, an extra day or two, I mean, I'm up against the deadline at this point, but if you need an extra day on a particular thing, please just email me over the weekend so that I know not to take a look at that particular thing until you give me the go-ahead. But as of Monday, I will start going through the projects one more time and doing my final evaluations on those. All right. So yeah, other than that, I just thank you guys. I know we had a couple more interruptions to this class than I had planned going into it, and I thank you for your flexibility. The class has been shrinking, and hopefully that was not my fault. I don't think it was, but yeah, hopefully you got something out of this class and it wasn't too much of a burden on you. So stay in touch. I always say, if you have questions, I'm certainly not an expert on every piece of educational technology, but I've been through a lot of it. So if you ever get stuck on something or just want some feedback on something or some ideas, my email's not going to change here. So always feel free to contact me that way. These class Moodles stay up for years. So if once you're registered with CCSU Moodle, you can always go back and take a look at stuff. So all of the videos from all the classes are posted each week. If there's anything you want to go back and review once the course is done, that will stay up there as well. And yeah, that's kind of all I got to say. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.